There are some rather incredible people that live on this planet, but every once in a while we discover someone utterly extraordinary. Today we're going to look at people you won't believe exist. Better stay tuned for number 1, because it might be just the weirdest thing you'll see today. Number 8. Mandy Sellers. This Englishwoman of Accrington, Lancashire, has a rare genetic disorder that causes her legs to reach a morbid and extraordinary size, which prevents her from even walking. The rest of her body, however, is quite the normal size. At one point, her lower extremities weighed an incredible 210 pounds. A few years ago, the growth of her legs led to a rather nasty infection, and her left leg had to be amputated. Now this is where it gets interesting. Sometime after the amputation, her left leg miraculously started to regrow at a rapid rate. And 2 years after the amputation, the leg had grown to 1 meter in girth and was nearly too large for her prosthetic limb. Soon after that, Mandy started taking pioneering medications that have seen her legs shrink down to around 150 pounds. Doctors are not quite sure how much her legs will shrink. One thing is certain though, no matter what happens, Mandy Sellers will keep her positive attitude towards life. Mandy Sellers continues to have clothes and shoes specially made because of her size and drives a specially adapted car. Number 7. Lizzie Velasquez. Lizzie has a rare disease which results in her being extremely skinny. You might find it hard to believe, but Lizzie's body has 0% fat and she weighs just 64 pounds despite consuming between a staggering 5,000 to 8,000 calories per day. This is due to marfanoid progeroid lipodystrophy syndrome. On top of being very hard to pronounce, this syndrome basically means that her body is unable to accumulate fat, making it impossible for her to gain weight no matter how much she eats. Lizzie is also blind in her right eye and can't see very well out of the other. As you can imagine, Lizzie was the subject of cruel bullying, with many people calling her the ugliest woman in the world. And when she was just a child, other kids were straight up refusing to even talk to her. However, Lizzie decided to stand up against all the bullying and work hard to achieve her goals. She started her own YouTube channel, which has received almost 70 million views to date. Lizzie even had a documentary made about her in 2015 entitled A Brave Heart: The Lizzie Velasquez Story. Number 6. Abdul Bajandar. Abdul Bajandar from Bangladesh suffers from an extremely rare disease known simply as epidermodysplasia verruciformis. I am pretty sure I just butchered that name, but let's just keep it rolling. Anyway, this condition, caused by an immune system defect, makes Abdul develop growths on his limbs that look exactly like tree branches, hence the name Tree Man. This condition is quite rare. In fact, only 200 cases have been documented so far. Poor Abdul has been struggling with this disease for more than 15 years. He first noticed the branches at the age of 10. The condition later became so severe that he was forced to retire from his job as a rickshaw driver. At one point, he actually tried cutting them off himself. But no matter how hard he tried, the branches kept reappearing again and again. Since 2016, Abdul has gone under more than 25 surgeries. Doctors removed a whopping 11 pounds of the growths in 2017. And just when they thought he had been cured, the branches reappeared. Now, Abdul is begging the doctors to amputate his hands because he can no longer handle the severe pain they cause him. Pretty sad indeed. Number 5. Ari Wibowo. Ari Wibowo from Indonesia, nicknamed Snake Boy, sheds his skin every 41 hours. This is due to the condition called erythroderma, better known as red man syndrome, which causes the skin to become extremely dry and scaly. To fight this disease, Ari must bathe every hour and apply lotion on a regular basis. He was born with this condition, which doctors can't cure. All Ari can do is make sure he stays well moisturized, because otherwise his skin becomes very painful and his body would harden up, making him unable to move. Fellow villagers have a perfectly reasonable explanation for Ari's condition. They believe the condition was caused by his mother killing a lizard while she was pregnant with him. According to the Indonesian superstition, If a woman mistreats an animal while pregnant, they will apparently cause the child to resemble the animal. Right. Due to this superstitious attitude and the fear that his condition may be contagious, when he was younger, the poor boy was forced to study alone, as no schools were willing to accept him because of ignorance about his condition in the community. Despite all of this, Ari still tries to live a relatively normal life in his village. Number 4. Carlos Haffy Rodriguez. The nickname Haffy isn't hard to understand once you get a look at Carlos Haffy Rodriguez. I mean, the man is missing the top half of his head. He became internet famous when his mugshot went viral in 2010. As you can imagine, it wasn't that crime that made him famous, but rather his bizarre appearance. However, Haffy wasn't born with his head this way. Instead, it was the result of the injury he suffered during a car accident when he was just 14 years old. The young Carlos was driving, get this, while on drugs when he hit a pole. Next thing he knew, he was thrown through the front windshield and landed on his head. His head was flattened, and he lost a portion of his brain and skull. But he survived. His head, however, retained the flattened appearance, causing many people to believe that his mugshot was photoshopped. Now, Carlos uses his deformity as a means to try to help others avoid drugs. Seriously, next time you think about driving while on drugs, just remember this dude's head. Number 3. Claudio Vieira de Oliveira. It's hard to imagine not being able to move your head or limbs, let alone seeing the world upside down because of how your head is positioned. That's a reality for Claudio Vieira de Oliveira from Brazil. When he was born, the doctor gave his mother what has to be the worst medical advice ever. They advised her to simply just let him pass away by starving him intentionally. Yep, you heard that correctly. You see, Claudio was born with arthrogryposis, meaning that his limbs were fused together and his head was positioned upside down and facing backward. It's hard to imagine someone living like that, I know. Luckily, Claudio's mother didn't take the doctor's advice, and she raised the boy despite his bizarre condition. As the boy grew, he realized he could write, type, and even operate a phone with his mouth. Claudio moves around by walking on his knees. It's hard for him to use a wheelchair because of his body shape. But a brave Claudio didn't let this hold him back from going to school and getting qualified as an accountant. At the age of 40, Claudio is quite independent. He undertakes work doing research, accounting, and occasional motivational speeches at special events. He's even written a book about his life titled, "The World is the Wrong Way Around." Number 2. Victoria Wright. Victoria Wright from England suffers from cherubism, a condition that causes her jaw to dramatically grow over time. She was diagnosed with this disease when she was just 4 years old and has lived with all the challenges brought forward by this condition. The results of this disorder, besides the obvious visual deformity, are increased pressure on her eyes and an overall increase in weight of her skull. In fact, doctors have stated that Wright's head has grown so much that it now weighs the same as a bowling ball. As you can imagine, growing up with this disorder made things pretty difficult for Victoria. She was constantly teased and abused. People called her names such as Buzz Lightyear. Despite the bullying, Victoria keeps a positive attitude. She avoided cosmetic surgery to make herself look more normal because she doesn't think you should have surgery to make others like you. She did, however, have surgery to relieve the pressure on her eyes, which saved her eyesight. Number 1. Man with the longest neck. Today's photo took me a while to research, so without further ado, let's just delve into it. You can see the man with what has to be the longest neck you've ever seen. There have been a few cases of people with abnormally long necks, but as you've probably figured out by now, this photo is manipulated. It's a screenshot from the video titled "Man with the Longest Neck in the World Works Out," uploaded by YouTube channel Pygmy. In this video that has garnered over 4 million views, we can see a close-up shot of a man's head. He talks about some kind of accident and, rather enthusiastically, proclaims that he's found an expert that can help him. Then his other self shows up, and we can finally see the long neck from the photo. You certainly don't have to be a genius to figure out the fakeness of it all. Which one of these amazing individuals did you find the most fascinating? Let us know in the comments below.